This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information that will expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers. Hey, A1 fans, AJ here. Before we get started in the episode, just wanted to let you know and acknowledge that there's been an awful lot going on in social media for women in tech. This particular episode was recorded on Monday, December 20th, which was before a lot of that kind of unfolded and took place. And that's why there's no direct mention of it here in this episode, but we will certainly talk about that a whole lot more. Enjoy the show.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Engineering podcast. You may have noticed in the last 2.5 seconds that I am not AJ Murray, aka No Blinky Blinky. I'm someone else, and we'll introduce ourselves in a second. But just for some context on this episode, this is kind of a special episode tonight. It's the result basically of some really great conversations between all of us and the regular, Art of Network Engineering podcast co-hosts. And basically the guys have expressed a desire to highlight the voices of women in network engineering on the podcast. So they have very graciously invited us to basically take over the podcast for an episode and share our experiences and talk about what it's like. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves? I'll start. My name is Lexie. You might know me as Track It Pacer on Twitter for the most part. I've been a network engineer for about 3 years now. I used to work at IBM in their hybrid cloud, and now I'm working at Blue Origin in avionics integration.
Very cool. I'll jump in.
Eyvonne?
So I'm Eyvonne Sharp on Twitter at Sharp Network. I am currently a technical transformation lead for Google Cloud. Before that was a solutions engineer for VMware. And then before that, spent 9 years as an enterprise network engineer. I've also done a lot of work for small VARs and integrators. So but we're not going to add up all those years. But anyway, excited to be here and talk about women in network engineering.
And hi, everyone. I'm Micheline Murphy, and I'm on Twitter at MishyFishMurphy. Currently, I just took a new role. So my current new role is as a pre-sales consulting systems engineer at WWT, which is a Cisco partner on the West Coast, St. Louis to the West Coast, hoping to get larger. Before that, I was an implementation engineer at CDW, where I specialized in designing, implementing, troubleshooting Cisco ACI data centers. And before that, I was a trial lawyer for 15 years. Decided that was getting a little stale, a little boring, and decided to try something new. Made the transition over the course of, I'd say about 4 or 5 years. And then now here I am.
And that sound means it's time for the wins. Winning in our Discord channel this week is Robin Canella. He passed the CompTIA Project Plus exam. Congratulations, Robin. Adil Khan finished one off right before the end of the year, the AZ700, which is the Designing and Implementing Azure Networking exam. Congratulations, Adil. Bill Murray passed the JNCIS Service Provider Specialist exam. Congratulations, Bill. And Adam Smith received an offer. This is incredible. Adam received an offer for his first IT networking job as a senior network engineer at a local municipality. Congratulations, Adam. Tata the Automator did a collaborative giveaway with David Bombal where they gave away over 600 copies of David's Udemy courses, which is a value of over $20,000 given to women in tech. Congratulations, Tata. That is fantastic. New Patreon joining us this week is Jao Munez. Thank you so much for your support of what we do here at the Art of Network Engineering. If you're interested in joining our Patreon program and joining us every time we record an episode, you can do so at patreon.com/artofneteng. And we thank all of our listeners for your support and wish you a very happy new year. Welcome to 2022. Now back to the show.
Hey, excited to be here tonight. All right, well, let's just dive into it. Y'all both have a lot more experience than I do in the workplace with network engineering specifically. And I mean, how's it been? As you know, we're talking specifically, about what is it like being a woman in network engineering, which I guess really could apply to being a woman in tech in general, right? What have your experiences been? Excuse me. What have your experiences been as women over the years in different companies and moving back and forth? How is it? Has it been different at different companies? Has your experience as a woman been mostly the same? I'll rate it on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'll kick it off. Well, I mean, so I've had a great career, first of all. And I've had lots of wonderful experiences. I mean, my entire career, though, I have almost always been the only woman in the room. But that was not necessarily something I was uncomfortable with. I mean, I grew up in a farm family, and my dad was a farmer, and I was always interested in the stuff the men were talking about. Like, I didn't want to be in the kitchen. I didn't want to be cooking. I wanted to be hanging out with the guys talking about farming stuff. So and I was a science math kid in school. My favorite teachers were all men. So I was really comfortable with that. And I will say that I've had some great advocates and guys throughout my career who've seen some ability there and encouraged me, which has been wonderful. I mean, I have had some negative experiences, but nothing like I've heard other people describe, and I'm really grateful for that. I've always been around enough advocates to kind of fill in that gap, but I've also been pretty careful. Like, if I got the creeps, I would avoid certain individuals, or just be really aware. Especially when I was younger. I'm in my 40s now, so I don't feel like it's such a big deal. But yeah, I mean, I was always careful at conferences and things like that. But I'll say, like, my overall experience has been positive. I mean, we can tell a negative story or two, but I've had more trouble with leadership than I have with, like, technical peers. They've been wonderful for the most part.
That's interesting. Do you mind if we dig into that? You don't have to get very specific.
No, I mean, I won't name names, but I mean, I've had the experience. So I was at a large healthcare company, and there was one senior director who I did not report up through him, but anytime we were on the call, there would be times when it was as if I was not speaking. Like, at one point, it was so obvious. I had a colleague message me in the background and go, "I am so sorry he's behaving this way." You know what I mean? Like, it was obvious enough for somebody to point it out. I think I worked at an engineering firm, a civil engineering firm, when I was young, and there was like a guy. He was older. He was in his 60s, and I was in my 20s, and there's just creepy stuff. But he never spoke to me unless just the two of us were in a room together, like the copy room or something. And then it would be like, "Hey, beautiful."
Ew.
And one time, like, I was standing at a counter, and he walked up and put his hand on the small of my back. It was just creepy. You know what I mean? And so he was then on my radar list, like, never going to be in the building alone with this guy, and going to keep my distance, because it was just uncomfortable. Now, there was another guy there who joked around all the time, and my last name is Sharp. So I'd walk in the room, he'd be like, "Well, there's a sharp woman." But he joked all the time, and he was that way whether people were in the room or were not in the room. It was like his nature, right? Which is very different than creepy dude who never acknowledges my presence except when nobody else is around. Like, that was creepy.
And then touches you in a weird way?
Yeah.
So you said he was on your radar after that. You also mentioned earlier, like, being careful. I think we know what that means, but for, can you talk about that a little bit more? Like, how have you been careful?
Well, so I personally, I don't drink anyway. Like that's just a choice my family makes. But like I would never like in a work situation be in a situation where I've intentionally limited my inhibitions or my cognitive ability. Like I just don't think that's safe. And I think I've always try to have a safe person, somebody, you know their character, you trust them. Like, so if you're in a new situation, to have somebody, another colleague there who you're like, if I needed a ride or if somebody got really weird, I could go to them and go, hey, could you walk me back to where, and like, at conferences, I'm not going to stay out in the bar, even not drinking until 11 p.m. Right? Like I'm going to go back to my room at 9:30. And
I am so curious about the conference experience. That was something I wanted to ask about because I actually have not been to a conference yet. Like,
I was always with great groups of people. Like at Cisco Live, I've never had a problem.
Yeah, Cisco Live.
Yeah,
but I've always been really careful.
But you've been careful,
right?
At the last Cisco Live that was in San Diego, I went out with some folks, and we started out with a bunch of folks that they were all people in the same program that I was in. So we started out at a dinner that we were being hosted for, and and eventually there's always imbibing involved. And I'm kind of like Eyvonne. I try to always be really socially aware. I'm not going to abstain. I'll drink one drink, just so that I have something in my hand. But I, especially in a strange town, and I don't know, if you'll pardon the pun, I don't know where all the exits are. There's a certain amount of hypervigilance that smart women have to have that, I've never seen my male peers have to worry about something like that. But I like distinctly remember I had gone out with some folks, went out with a guy that, I would trust with my life, went out with a couple of other women, and the other women got really, really drunk. And so here we were in a strange city, and he had left earlier, and so it was just the three of us. And so, I was the only sober person around, and I'm like, fuck, I got to get everybody home, And so it's 2:00, and I'm like walking all over, San Diego trying to get these women home, and home safely. So it's a thing that it's just one of those extra steps that women just have to do. And, and women have to watch out for each other, when you don't see your male counterparts ever having to take all of these extra steps. I remember a time I was being shadowed on a call by a male peer of mine. And I was conducting the workshop. So I was talking to the customer and whatnot. And afterwards, he goes to me, he goes, Mish, you should just tell them what to do. And, how do you tell another engineer, a guy engineer who, I could tell he just didn't have a clue. I mean, until you've established yourself as a woman, as an expert, you don't stand up in the front of the room and you just don't tell people what to do.
You have to kind of prove it first.
You gotta
without it being assumed.
Gently kind of push the customer, and persuade the customer that, oh yeah, this great idea that I should really just tell you what to do was their idea in the first place. And, it's just another one of those examples that, of how it's just more difficult. I mean, if I had the authority to just tell them what to do, you don't think I wouldn't do that?
I think
it's not that easy, buddy.
It is really not that
vein,
easy, though.
Like one of the things I've noticed in myself, and it's a skill that I've developed, which actually has served me well at this point, is that in my mind, I only get so many words. And so my words have to count. Like when I say something, it has to be meaningful, because if I say something that's flippant and gets me dismissed, like that's not an opportunity that necessarily comes back around. So
Like what do you mean by flippant? Sorry.
well,
Like,
I guess I have just always wanted to be sure when I say something, I know that I'm right and that it's going to be meaningful to the conversation. That,
okay.
but because I don't want to misuse that opportunity. And I can think of a few key times in my career when I first started at the healthcare company. I was a contractor. I wasn't even full time, and I'd been there like 3 months, and I hadn't said hardly anything. I just kind of done my job, kept my head down. And at the time, we had like the old VPN 3000 concentrators, and we needed to set up land-to-land tunnels on ASAs. And I'd done a ton of that. Well, nobody who worked there had done that. And so the boss was like, we need somebody to figure this out. I'm like, oh, I can do that. And I knew I could do it, and I'd done it before. And I came in and I fixed a problem in a couple of days that they thought it was going to take them a week to figure out because nobody had done it and they're going to have to learn it. And it was a huge credibility builder for me, right? It would have been very different if I'd have been like, well, I think I could figure that out. You know what I mean? Like, speak up when you've got something to say, decisive. And if you don't, shut it. And that would be, I wish some of my dude friends knew how to do that. But
that's a huge struggle for me because everything that comes out of my mouth is almost always self-deprecating and like, I don't know what I'm doing, even if I do maybe know a little more about what I'm doing, because I'm so worried about, looking like I don't know anything that I just try to get ahead of it. This is in technical environments, especially, right? Like, because I still feel super new, and when you want to get ahead of it, so you're just going to tell people right away, I don't really know what I'm doing, even if that's not totally accurate. And I've never heard a man do that. Not saying they don't do it ever, but like I've never.
Heard in the sales world, like you've got folks who play stump the chump with everybody. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm going to prove that I'm as smart as the, sales engineer that I'm dealing with. Right. And so, I mean, stump the chump is a game that technical people like to play. So I don't think it's exclusive to us as women, but I do think I have always felt a burden to earn respect that other people, it's just assumed.
Yeah, I see that too. I mean, and I had to tell you this story. This is going to stick with me until the day I die. This was just before I went away to college. And my dad sat me down one day and he goes, Miss, I got to tell you something. And he goes, you're a young woman and you're a Chinese woman. And you're never going to have a level playing field. And you're always going to have to be better and smarter and quicker in order just to get in the game. And, my dad was really spare on advice. And so when he gave it, it's always something that really just sticks with you. That is, damn it, that's still true. That advice that my dad gave me when I went away to college when I was 16, damn it, that's still true. And it makes me mad because when he gave it to me, I was like, no, that can't be true. That is so unfair. I was like I was a hot-headed teenager then, I'm a hot-headed not teenager now. It still pisses me off that is the way things are, that as a woman, as a woman of color, I'm always going to have to be better than the boys, that I'm always going to have to be better, faster than the boys. And it's going to always have to be, higher just to be on the same field with them. And, now as a not teenager, it's something that I've accepted, that that's just the way things are. But, it still makes me mad. I'm like, damn it, how come that guy gets to be mediocre and he's got like confidence to spare?
And, you know what? I wish I'm not saying I want to be just, I'm not saying I want to be mediocre necessarily, but I want to be like, I want it to be okay for anyone to be mediocre, anyone. And I feel like I only ever, the few women that I've ever encountered in, this field, I feel like every man who introduces like another woman to me is like really, really excited about her. And he's like, she's kick ass. She's so cool because she can do all this stuff. And it's great to like hear the support. But I also get it's this weird feeling of like, okay, but what if like there's a woman who's just like sort of okay at it? Just like a bunch of other men are. Can we just, I'm so sorry. I have this alarm keep going off. God, can we just have like permission to just be okay at our jobs? Like, do we have to always be the kick-ass empowering woman? That's amazing and great. But
I mean,
like, Can we just have permission to be human?
It's really great to be kick-ass. It's great to be recognized as being kick-ass. But you know what? But what gets my goat is that you're so alone sometimes, or I'm so alone, or maybe we all are, so just that I feel like every time I get introduced to a new team, I'm carrying like the entire weight of womanhood on my shoulders. I'm like, Jesus, how strong do you think I must be that I can be the woman representative for everybody? And why? And it's just like what you said. How come I just can't just be Mish?
I've never felt the need.
That's a great way to put it.
Before I've got so many ideas, but I want to circle back to something Micheline said real quick. Hooray for great dads.
Yeah,
because most women that I have talked to, and I don't know Lexie's background, but most women that
I have an awesome dad.
Okay,
I'll just say that.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and I know another really excellent female engineer. All of us have had strong dads that we admired. I mean, that's 5 out of 5, right? That I know personally. And I think if you want your girls to be strong, be a great dad. Like that's an important thing to know. Like I had a dad with such integrity. I mean, he didn't miss a day of work for 13 years. He was a blue collar guy. But just, not a lot of words, but just a great dad. And, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah. I don't know about y'all, but my dad just told me all the time, you can do whatever you want to do. Just do whatever you want to do. Just do it. He didn't even really, anything I was interested in, he was willing to help me out with that. He was really supportive, and I think you're right. Yeah. That means a lot.
Mm-hmm. So anyway,
and it gives you a good idea of thanks, Dad. Thanks to all our dads.
And I think it's important for girls to hear that it's okay to go do XYZ. I mean, it's okay to go be in science. It's okay to go be in engineering. It's okay to go, do computer science. I had an experience, and just to kind of go with that whole, being okay to go do those things. When I was I think I was a freshman in high school, or maybe a sophomore, my school offered the very first programming language class. Basic. Oh my God, basic. I was interested in it. I wanted to try it out and see what it was. So the class was really small. There were 10 of us. I was the only girl in the classroom. The teacher didn't think that girls should code. So every time I asked a question, I got ignored. And
Oh my God.
No, I got no help for any of the projects that we got set. I got no time, even though the class was small. I mean, it was 10. Everybody had a computer. We were all working on the same project right in the same room. I got no FaceTime with the teacher. Do you think I finished the class? I didn't finish that class,
Why would you?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm smarter than that. I don't want to waste this fool's time, So
that's why I feel like, having that support from your, mom, dad, whoever, but we talked about dads earlier, right? Like I think there's something special about having a man, and maybe like the most important man to you, potentially like tell you can do this.
You belong. Or your voice matters. Belong. Yeah.
Yes, you matter, and whatever you want to do, you can do, because girls need it later really badly, because we have experiences like that. That's horrible. I can't believe you just got ignored.
My folks, my mom put me in a little local programming class when I was 10. Like, it was on Apple IIe's, and we learned to write like basic loops, right? And then I had some really phenomenal science teachers. Mm-hmm. Like, my 8th grade science teacher was my best friend for a while. Like, and he was in his 70s. It was bad. Socially challenged. I didn't even realize it was a thing until I got to college. So I wanted to major in chemistry, went to University of Kentucky. My mom was a teacher. And so she's like, let's go over to the College of Education and talk to him. So I sit down. I'm sitting across the desk from the dean of the College of Education. And we're talking. I'm like, well, I'm thinking about majoring in chemistry. And she's like, it is so wonderful to see a young woman interested in the hard sciences. And I was like, huh? Like, you know what I mean? It was almost patronizing to me.
Yeah.
And that was like my first glimmer that, like, huh. And then I switched over to computer science because I didn't want to do chemistry for a living. And I only girl in most of my classes. And like, I had a work thing one day. And so I was wearing a kind of a pantsuit sort of a thing. It was the 90s. And like, I walked into class, like with my hair fixed and no ponytail, and people almost did not recognize me. It was so funny. Like, but it was, when I wasn't in my sweats and my ponytail, it was like, it was very clear that I was different than everybody else. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it was just a moment that I remember, like, oh, one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of weird attention too when that difference gets emphasized, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that difference can, if you're savvy, you can use that difference to good effect and set yourself apart. And I mean, there's no way that anything you say or do, or, any project that you complete successfully is ever going to erase the fact that you're a woman. So you might as well own it. Right. And, yeah. If the way that, customers remember me is, oh, that woman engineer from that, from the ACI team, she was awesome. I'm okay with that. I want you to remember me and remember that I was awesome. And if the way for you to remember who I was is that I was the only damn woman on that team in the first place, okay. Okay. And it's kind of like taking these challenges that we've been given as women and just turning them on their head, and then taking whatever advantage you can out of it. And it's really not, just in tech. I mean, I've had challenges as a woman lawyer, like my entire life,
Yeah, you had a whole other career prior to that.
And you want to talk about a scenario where you stand up in front of the room and you have to be able to command authority. And you don't know these people from Adam, right? You just picked them out of the jury pool. They're like, these are the dumb people who couldn't get out of jury service, and you have to be able to tell them how to think about this case, and they have to say, oh, okay. So in terms of that ability to command that authority, it's been, a trial, pardon the pun, it's been a trial my entire career.
Do you feel like that trial lawyer background beginning, got you ready for dealing with it in tech, or it was just like being a network engineer piece of cake compared?
There are maybe a lot more women lawyers, at least in in the county I practice in, and in the practice area that I practice in, there are a lot more women. I think that tech recognizes its problem more than the law does. So, there are very few women who make it to be partners or managers, or, a little bit more so maybe now judges. There are very few women lawyers who get up into the highest echelons of the law. Take a look at the Supreme Court. I mean, there's 9 seats, and there's two, three women now on it. So, women are 50% of the population. So, we're still missing 2 women.
That's really interesting. You brought up a good point. Like tech is aware that it has a problem, right? It's aware, but if what's being done about that problem is another question, but it is fairly self-aware in that regard.
And here's my point about what needs to get done. I mean, the tech industry was built by a bunch of dudes. There are women contributions to tech that are embedded in its history that have disappeared because of all of the guys who have come in the past, in the future. The problem with the tech industry and its gender disparity was built by men, so men have to participate in the solution. So they made this problem. They need to, put on their big girl panties and, start working the problem. So, we've got a bunch of smart guys here. It's a problem to be worked
there are a lot of men
else.
who care about it, right? Yeah, there are a lot of men who are supportive and care about it. Case in point, we're here tonight, right? And so, I think, something like this, giving your platform, giving people a platform to speak, giving women a platform to speak. I've always said, like, I have on my Twitter profile, I've had this tweet pinned up, one of my first tweets, I've had it pinned there forever because I feel like it is a question that I've had forever. And it's like, how do we get more women into network engineering, basically? And I've got so many responses from men on there. And they vary from very supportive and thoughtful and maybe we need to have more women making content for network engineers. Maybe we need to have, more programs for girls specifically geared towards network engineering. And then we get the comments like, well, maybe women should try harder, or maybe women need to not expect handouts or something. That was one of the, so I leave that up there because every once in a while somebody looks at my profile and decides they want to answer. And it's really interesting hearing because it's almost always a man. Most of there are some from women, which are all helpful, but most of them are from men, and they're just it's an interesting mix of people. But I think that there are men who care, right? Very much. But they don't know really where to start. So sometimes I like to say hey, you can do little things in your workplace. Like if a woman's talking in a meeting, this doesn't have to be tech. This could be any career field, right? Like if a woman's trying to talk in a meeting and no one's listening to her, maybe you should command your presence in the room and bring everyone's attention back to her. That might feel patronizing in the moment, but you have to be an ally in some form or fashion. You got to try, right? Because a lot of men say they care, but they don't really do a whole lot about it. And they just sort of talk about it and don't do anything. And you're right. They have to participate actively. You got to try, you got to put yourself out there and listen to women, but be active about it too. Right.
Yeah. And I think the things that I've appreciated the most is when a colleague who I've worked together on a project with acknowledges my part of it, right? Well, stands up. He's like, well, I did this part. Eyvonne did this, or these were her ideas, or she had the idea to, or you know what I mean? Like acknowledgement of, and honestly, the culture where I'm at now in Google Cloud, in my particular team, that's been wonderful. And honestly, it's been so wonderful. It was startling to me. Like, that somebody was like, hey, Eyvonne did this thing and it was really good. I mean, not that I haven't had people advocate in the past, but it was so intentional where I am now. So I think, if she does and I'm not say she's exceptional when she's not, but if she had an idea, and you should do this with anybody who has an idea, right? Like
right.
That,
absolutely.
give them credit for it. Right. And support, it just, that builds everybody up and is going to make the team better. But for me, I've deeply appreciated, or, if you're meeting with an executive and working with her on a project and she's made a real contribution, bring her into the meeting. I had people do that for me.
Yeah.
And because she may need that like transitive trust that you can provide, right? She may not be able to get that.
That's a great term.
Own. Yeah.
Transitive trust. That's a great term. Did you make that up? I love it.
No, I hope I got it right. I was like, I think that's what
even
it's
if
called.
You didn't, I love it.
Yeah.
Transitive trust.
Yeah.
So
I trust you because somebody I trust trusts you, right?
Okay. Yeah. That's a really, really great, that's like solid example of what someone can do.
I love your example, Eyvonne, especially, because we were talking earlier about how often it is where we're in a room and we're having a conversation and we're being talked over, or, what we've contributed to the conversation is not being acknowledged. And that situation is such a vulnerability that someone dishonest can just come scoop in there and take whatever we've put on the table that we've contributed earnestly to the conversation and say, oh, look at what I just did. And, rooster up and say, caca and to have colleagues who have that kind of integrity to say, oh, no, that idea belonged to Mish, or that idea belonged to Lexie or Eyvonne, is important. And I think that's an indicator of a more healthy working environment. And I think that one of the things that really gives me hope, and this is the old union lawyer in me, talking about the Great Resignation and this flux that we've had this year of companies not being able to find the talent that they want, or not being able to retain the talent that they need. I can't tell you, I've had like so many customers who are finding themselves in a pickle because all of a sudden their ACI talent, their ACI engineers like, nah, I found something new. I'm out of here. 2 weeks. See ya.
Right.
So, that kind of atmosphere where companies are really thinking hard about how they retain the smarts that they need to retain, really should be looking carefully at what does their culture look like? How are they treating the women engineers that they have? Or how are they going to attract or retain women engineers? Because the market is so competitive now that it's a really good time to push change. And, I just went through an interview process for myself recently. And I flat out asked the hiring manager, I'm like, look, I have a social media presence. I have a lot of women engineers who I talk to, as a woman engineer, and a lot of women engineers who, look to me, and I would like to be associated with a company. I need to be associated with a company that I would be proud of saying, as a woman, you would be treated well to work here. And I said, how do you respond to that? That is a need I have.
You are so much braver than I am.
Yeah, me too. I would never ask that in an
so
interview.
afraid to ask that question.
Well, I was sitting on a job I already had, and I'm like, when
you had all the cards.
Job, I'm like, I have, but I think it's
great.
important to ask those questions. How is it? Because as a woman, and I got to be, real truthful with you. This is my third career. I don't got time to be. I don't have time. I don't have energy. I'm like old and tired now, and if I got to play those stupid ass sexist games, I'm gonna be leaving real quick. So I don't want to waste your time
for that.
One of the things I wanted to just circle back to that occurred to me as Micheline was talking is that you may find yourself in a situation where you realize that a woman is being talked over or talked down to, or there's just something not okay going on. And you're like, why doesn't she stand up? One thing that you need to understand is sometimes she can't. Because if she does, she gets bitch stamped on her forehead and then she loses credibility. So there are situations where she's doing a social calculus about whether or not she's in an environment that's safe enough for her to push back. And you may have no idea whether it's an environment that's safe enough for her to push back because you're not living it every day. And that's not necessarily even a slight to you if you're a dude working in tech, but understand that sometimes women need somebody else to advocate for them from a position of safety and strength.
Yeah, that's totally true.
I mean, and it's going to go so much further if you're like, Eyvonne, finish your thought. And you don't have to be a jerk about it, but just like, or the girl in the meeting says something, and then some dude who never works, who heard a good idea, is like, oh, you know what? I think we should. And it's what the lady just said. Oh, yes, Eyvonne just said that. I mean, it doesn't take a lot, and it doesn't even need to be confrontational. But that's what it is to advocate. It's not, coming in ready to fight. It's acknowledging.
It doesn't take a whole. Yeah. I think a lot of people a lot of men, I'm guessing, may be overwhelmed by the at the thought of being an ally and advocate, because it sounds like it could take up a lot of energy and emotions, but you're not, just like Eyvonne said, it's not, doesn't take a whole lot really, especially a man-to-man type of conversation or type of interaction. If you're a man telling another man, oh yeah, Eyvonne just said that. Eyvonne had a great point. Eyvonne, can you repeat that? Sorry, some people may not have heard, or something like that. Like that's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Right. And I mean, I think that there are a lot of different levels of it, of being supportive. And my two bits is that, if you're going to be supportive, pick where you are on the spectrum, where you start out, and then move up. It's great if you're in a meeting and I'm getting ignored, and you're like, oh yeah, Mish just said that. That was a great idea. But don't stick there forever. And, because at some point, I think, I've heard a lot of stories. I have never actually been in a situation, but I've heard a lot of horror stories where, sitting in a meeting and someone just says something flat out inappropriate in the meeting, and everybody's sitting around going, did he really just say that?
And no one
says anything. And, it takes, I'm going to be real straightforward. It takes some real courage to step into that silence and say, dude, that was totally inappropriate. But that unanswered can do a lot of harm, can be a can be just as bad as if that, inappropriate had crawled across the table and stabbed you in the heart,
Yeah.
It is, there are just some things where, you just got to step. And what I always struggle with this. I love it when, to encourage people to be, step up and give appropriate, credit where credit is due. But it bothers me when that's all they do. Because, that's a great start. I'm really glad you're in that, but you can't rest on that.
The toughest part for me is recognizing that inappropriate thing has happened and then getting over the shock of it. Because honestly, I think I like to say this is I've never heard something super inappropriate in a meeting in front of everyone. I like to think I'm the kind of person who'd be like, all right, what the fuck? But I do understand the shock of someone saying something like that, because it doesn't happen often. I'm guessing at decent places. That can be difficult, but you're right. You kind of have to push through that because stuff happens and you got to,
Well, and I've got one more horror story, and then we're going to start being more positive. But I had a situation once where a different senior director, and this was a company that I loved working for, and my boss was amazing. But my senior director kept bugging one of our sales engineers for shirts. They never get us shirts. I'm like, come on, get us shirts. And so he's talking to the senior director. I stuck my head in the door. I'm like, hey, when are we going to get our shirts? And no joke, my senior director made a quip that involved me not having a shirt.
Ooh.
In front of a vendor that I didn't
Gross.
know.
Ooh.
And I turned red. I'm turning red now. I had to leave the room. You know what I mean? And I tried so hard to let it go. I tried to let it go and I couldn't. And so a few days later, I walked into his office and said, we need to talk. A couple days ago, you said this thing and it made me really uncomfortable. I don't want anything to be weird. I don't want it to go beyond this, but you need to know you said this thing and it made me really uncomfortable. And then he left me alone, which is fine. But then I went to my boss, who I really trusted, who I had a great relationship with. And I said, look, this is everything that went down. This is what he said. I went back and I said this to him. I don't want you to do anything, but I want you to know in case there's a change in attitude toward me. Right. And so on one hand, yes, I'm saying, dude, sometimes you need to step up, but understand that a lot of times, we have to have those very frank, direct conversations ourselves.
Like you said, it's social calculus, basically. You have to weigh the pros and the cons. And, sometimes you're thinking okay, the weight, if I don't speak up, then all the other women who come after me or something may not, they may have to deal with this too. So I kind of have a responsibility, but then it's well, but what about me? And I have to take care of myself. And what if there's retaliation?
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
And I knew the power dynamics.
So much.
I had been there several years. I knew I had credibility with leadership around that guy. I knew that he'd had issues with HR in the past. So he was really he really didn't want to go there again. Right. There are all these things. And so it felt like I could go.
Signs of a great guy. Just a great dude.
And, he's a husband and a dad. And I don't know that, I'm not going to say he's a horrible person.
Sorry, I'm going to,
it was not
I apologize
okay for him to say what he said.
No. Husbands and dads do this shit all the time. That does not preclude. You can have a daughter and that doesn't mean shit. I'm sorry. If you have a daughter, that doesn't mean you can't be sexist or gross to the women in your office.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not yelling at you,
Well,
Eyvonne. I hear men say this all the time. It's like, well, I have a daughter myself, so I would never. I don't give a fuck if you have a daughter. That doesn't mean you're a good guy. It doesn't mean you just treated me appropriately, right? Because I'm not your daughter. So sorry.
I have a daughter as an excuse, and
set me off.
and it doesn't fly in court. So
right.
I have a daughter, so I would never, XYZ, charge 1, charge 2, charge 3. And
I said all that, really told that story to kind of say, think about the jokes you tell, the movies you talk about, all the team getting together, going to lunch, those conversations,
right?
I mean, what, and I'm in the South. We use phrases like mixed company, which is a very old concept. But anyway, is
that an old phrase?
I don't know. I feel like it's a very Southern.
Is it
gender role kind of?
Oh, it's I didn't even realize.
Mixed company is like, men and women together. Like there's things that are okay for guys to talk about.
I didn't realize that was the basis of it.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Interesting. Okay.
Southern.
Okay.
And, but
we couldn't tell you, Vaughn.
I know. But, it's not okay to talk about, how hot the chick was in the movie, or get detailed about your date last night, or, whatever it is. Like, those are just not work appropriate conversations. Mm-hmm. And when a woman is present, she may play it off, and you may be like, oh yeah, but she's cool. Stop it. Right.
Yeah. She's not cool okay with it.
Because she has a job to do and she wants a relationship with her peers. So she's acting cool because she's not going to be a jerk in every single conversation and tell you to shut up. But
and while we're on this topic, you said no more horror stories, Eyvonne, but no, it's okay. I understand we're talking about it quite a bit, but there's one thing we haven't completely touched on yet that I think we need to, and that is hitting on your female coworkers. So, like, specifically, we've sort of talked about jokes, but that's a big problem. I think there's a lot of people in the chat. I am seeing the chat, by the way, guys. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of people in the chat talking about, we have fathers who are like, I want to raise my boys right. I want to make sure they don't do this kind of stuff when they grow up. And I'm not a parent, so I can't, speak to specific like parenting techniques or anything, but I just say, like, please start out, if you are willing to take a suggestion from me, please start out with teaching your boys the idea of consent in some form or fashion, right? Like, don't hug if your child is really young, and he wants to hug anybody, it doesn't have to be a little girl, but anybody, if he wants to hug someone and that child doesn't want to hug him back, tell him, don't hug her. She doesn't want to hug you. And that's okay. Right. Yeah. Things like that, because I remember being a girl and thinking this is problematic when I was very young, is like, that little boy has a crush on you, go hug him. He wants to hug you. And I didn't want to hug him. Right. Like, just think about that. Yeah. So, but I think it starts in that sort of way. Teach your boys their whole lives not to be like, to respect other people's personal space. That includes whoever they're attracted to, right?
Well, the other thing too
at a certain point. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing too is that, in the context of the conversation we're having, which is that we're all network engineers, that's a job,
So, yeah.
I am showing up to work so that I can get my paycheck.
I'm not here to get hit on.
Same as you. I am not here to get hit on. I am here to give you advice about your routing protocols or your data center, or, let's talk about, NXOS versus, ACI versus VXLAN, open source. But you know what? If you want to talk about the size of my tits, or, am I free on Friday? Go F yourself, you know? And let me go talk to my boss. Because
I mean,
I've been married. I got married
not.
really young, so that was never an issue for me. Like I was,
you never had people hit on you even though you were married. I feel like that does not stop. That doesn't stop men sometimes.
Maybe, but I mean, I just was like,
Okay.
you just don't flirt. Yeah. You don't like. They're just again. You be careful. You know what I mean? Like you got to be.
There's the social calculus though, right? Because if you're nice to you're new at a job, for example, and you're new to maybe the career field, and you're just being nice to everybody because you want to be friendly. They're your coworkers, and you're trying to learn, and you might be needing to learn from them. That can just being nice and friendly to people as a woman, that can be misinterpreted.
That does not mean I'm available.
Yeah, that's not flirting.
Right.
That does not mean I'm available.
I've had a man just completely assume that I'm interested in him, then find out that I'm not available, and then have a self-described mental breakdown about it, and then just completely ruin my work experience. So you teach your boys not to do that, maybe, and also just keep in mind, women are there to do a job, and even if she is single, even if she is looking for a man, it's not the end of the world if it's not you and you're her coworker, right? Like you don't have to ask her out. Like just move on, just go somewhere else, right? I don't know. I think that's the safest option. I don't like being hit on at work. I'm sure there are women who would be okay with it if it's someone they're interested in, but it's just such a weird, tricky terrain. Just maybe don't do it. Like default to not doing it. You can't lose.
So the analogy I use is that if you, and I'm talking to a male coworker, would have trouble if Eric hit on you, why the fuck do you think I'm not going to have trouble if you hit on me? The workplace is the workplace. I am here to work, not find a date, not get flirty with anybody, not get sexy with anybody, not to hook up. None of that shit happens at work. That's not what they're paying me to do. So, I don't understand why guys just can't keep that out of the workplace.
And especially true for women in network engineering.
Yeah.
They're there because they're interested in the craft. You know what I mean? They didn't choose this career because
there's so many women.
They're looking for a man, So I mean, and that's a hard one. I feel like
no one picks a major like, oh yeah, there's almost no women in that major. There's almost no women in computer science. I'm going to go major in that. Like, are you kidding me? It's 2021. Yeah.
So one of the things we've got in the notes that I've always, and honestly, even about this podcast, I've always been reluctant to be the person carrying the flag for women in tech. Like I wanted to be an engineer and I wanted to have conversations about engineering and I wanted to be technical because there's only so much bandwidth you have and only so many causes you can give yourself to. Yeah. And I didn't want to be the woman who talks about being a woman all the time. Right?
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
that's a tough one.
Didn't I just say it about having to carry womanhood on your shoulders all the time?
Exactly. Yeah.
What's up with that? I've yet to be on a team where I'm not the only woman.
Yeah.
If I fail, does that mean that everybody else on my team are like, oh, those women engineers, they're so sketchy. You shouldn't have a woman engineer.
It's a lot of pressure.
I don't need that. Nobody needs that.
Like we were talking about before, it should be okay to be just okay, at your job. Like it's great to be kick-ass. Right. A lot of women are, but it's okay if we're not.
So I had a really, really cool boss who was like, Mish, failure is a part of life. At some point in time, if you are doing the job, you will fail. When that inevitability happens, I don't want to be extra burden with all of these conceptions of, women engineers just aren't up to snuff because Mish failed at X. I'm like, damn it, that's not fair. I mean, you don't do that when Eric fails. Why should you do that when I fail? And that's the remnant of that fiery, hot-headed teenager saying, God damn it, the world should be more fair.
And something that I struggled with a lot, I think I'm finally starting to get over it. But especially when I started getting brought into the social media conversations, like when I was invited to be on Packet Pushers, when I was invited to participate in Tech Field Day. And they are wonderful. Those are wonderful organizations, and they did a lot for me in my career. Have nothing negative to say. But internally, I was always had that, they picked me because I'm a woman. And like, if I were a dude with my skills, would I have been selected? Right? I mean, that was a struggle for me to, and on one hand, I'm like, well, I'm here, so I'm going to make the best of it. But at the same time, there was this internal, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome. I don't know what that is, but like, am I here just because they needed a woman? Because if you look at most of the delegate pools, there's one, sometimes two women.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they just needed a woman. And like I said, I think I'm getting over that. But that was a real concern that am I just here as a token, as opposed to being a valid contributor that has something meaningful.
And that one's hard. That one's hard to address too, because, of course people want to include women
and we want them to.
Trying to do better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But then
that's
that
why we're here.
sword. So it can only, what I'm saying is, I think probably we can only solve it with time and more women coming into the field, because then that results in, panels with more women than men sometimes. Right. And, it's a little bit more normalized, but right now it's kind of this weird side effect of not very many women in the field.
And if you get the opportunity, take it. Like, absolutely. Right. Those are great things. But just, it was always an internal struggle of mine.
That reminds me, just real quick, I had an interview once upon a time where it was clear that I was not the right person for the job, like very early in. And the rest of the conversation was really awkward because we were trying to fill, I guess the interviewer was trying to fill 30 minutes at least. But one of the things that he said to me, towards the end was, "Oh, you're so lucky to be a woman. Everyone is looking for women. Everyone's trying to hire women." And I'm sure he didn't mean it too terribly, but it was,
but it really
made me
comes
feel really
across
shitty.
as
it made me feel really shitty.
Yeah. Like, I don't care who you are. I just want, and it's just another form of,
and he's saying you suck, but you're lucky because you're a woman, so you'll get hired. He's like, you suck at your job, but someone will hire you. That. Yeah. That feels
that's
bad.
just another form of objectification, though. I mean, we always talk about, oh, you look at that, whatever movie, and you cast that woman only just because she's got big tits and a great ass, and she has no speaking lines and she feels no purpose in the plot, but there she is. I don't want to be that woman. I don't want to be that woman on any engineering team. And if that's what you're going to hire me, well, for then, F that, because
thank you next.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you next. I'm
glad. Yeah. I'm glad when we hear that stuff though from people. I'm glad I heard that from that interviewer, because it made me feel better about really bombing that interview. I was like, I don't want to work there anyway, so I'm really glad I couldn't answer your BGP questions, man. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that and I struggled with this. Like I said, I've reinvented myself 3 times. I have always struggled with being confident about my own skills.
Yep.
About being confident enough to say, I know that. I don't have to go Google that for affirmation. I can just say that in the room. I know that the answer to that question, or I and it's something that I don't know if it's as a woman or if it's as me personally, or, as a lawyer, that facade of confidence is something that's a requirement. I mean, you're going to suck as a lawyer if you can't emanate some kind of confidence in the courtroom. But that doesn't mean you have to feel that. I mean, it could be just as phony as an actor, playing a role. So I've struggled, about just being able to embrace that. And this is my third time around as a career. I was really intentional about, okay, I know what skills I have, and I know how strong they are, and trying to internalize, that confidence. And I'm okay with saying, okay, you know what? I don't know shit about collab. Or I don't, I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
It's being confident in what you know, right, and you don't know.
But, you've got an ACI question, and I'm telling you it's not going to work that way. And I may not just stand up in the room and just tell you what to do because, that woman thing. But, but goddamn it, I know I'm right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, we've talked about the challenges and some of the things that men have done that frustrate us. Why don't we talk about, pivot a little bit into like what, it's sort of that feeling, a sense of like, okay, what can men do? But also like, what have we specifically experienced that has helped us along, from men or other women, even, help supporting us in our careers and in this field. I mean, I have, at IBM, there was somebody who mentored me for a long time, and he was just amazing. I mean, I consider him a close friend now. He just, one day, I expressed a little bit of interest in, I think, Python, and he was like, yeah, let's have a session. And he just, we had a WebEx, and we talked for 3 hours about Python, and he gave me an introduction to it. And he, ever since then, we've just been on and off talking about different things. He'd always, if I had a question, sit down with me and go over it. It just the best kind of working relationship I've ever had was, this mentorship, right, because there was never any mention of like, you're a woman, so I'm specifically mentoring, right, you because I think more women should be in the field. No, it was just sort of, and maybe that's the reason why, or maybe that contributed, but right, he didn't say it, and I didn't really care because he was nice, he was kind, and he was helping me, right, without being weird. Somehow, right, that's really difficult for some men, but so mentoring a woman in your field, not specifically necessarily just because she's a woman, but if she expressed interest, that's something you can do as a man in a professional environment that is appropriate, right, acceptable, and very supportive. And mentoring does take a lot of energy and time. I know that, but if you have the mental space for it and you're ready to go, like, if there's a woman who looks a little curious about something, you can at least ask, like, hey, do you want to know more about that? And if she misinterprets it and doesn't like it and thinks you're being creepy, just let it go and leave her alone, right? But if she's interested and she wants to engage with you, do it.
I got to tell you, and here's my contrast. Having gone from different fields. When I got into network engineering, of course, I started out and I started reading books and, going online and things like that. And of course, the inevitable question comes up because, you can't get like 100% of anything from like just a document. So, I started asking questions. There are some incredibly generous, kind, smart people out there who are, so free with their time and energy in tech. I think it is one of the biggest strengths of the industry that if you take some time to to scratch around and find the right place, you will find some incredible people who will literally spend hours with you and will be just as excited when you get the concept as if they got it themselves. I remember when I first started out, I was having a question and I was trying to figure this concept out, and I was on it was actually the Cisco Learning Network, and I was posting back and forth, which is a kind of an awkward medium. And the person I was posting with, ironically, happened to be another woman. So that was actually really, really cool. And we were going back and forth in these posts with this big delay. And finally, she just said, I'm going to call you. She didn't know me from Adam. I did not know her. She was going to help me with this, understand this problem. I found out on that call she was calling me from the Middle East somewhere. And now I'm in the Pacific Northwest in the United States. So she's got to be like 9 time zones away. And that she took the time to call me and talk me through this problem that I was working on, to this day, it still sticks with me. I mean, that people in this field, are that generous with their time and with their own brain trust. And so that is, that's an incredibly awesome thing. So, and again, it was a situation where it didn't matter that I was a woman, obviously, because, she was a woman too. So it's all cool, but I've had guys who've been like, in Europe, and they're like, hey, I have that config. Do you just want me to email it to you? So, if you look around there's a lot of hope. For me, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot to be proud about this community, that it's generous like that. You just kind of got to sometimes you just got to step around those, those bad apples. I'm kind of the opinion that bad apples will make the whole barrel go bad. So you got to identify them and kick them out. But, there is a lot of the barrel in IT that is worth saving and is worth keeping in mind. So that's my 2 bits.
Yeah, I really echo that. Like the vast majority of my experiences have been positive. People have been decent and helpful. There are a couple folks in particular who have been advocates as long as I've worked for them, helped me get jobs, helped me get visibility inside an organization, who've amplified my voice. And that's been great. And I feel like specifically the networking community is great about that. Mm-hmm. There are like hardships and there are challenges. But it's like I said at the beginning, like at the end of the day, it's been great for me. It's been great for my career. It's been great for my family. And I've enjoyed the vast majority of it. And it far outweighs the negative. And, I have had some difficult experiences. They've not all been because I'm a woman. Some of it's been I was in an organization with just a horribly broken culture. Some of it was I was paired with people who there were just personality clashes that didn't work. And I don't believe that those were gender specific, because I know people of other genders who had similar issues. You know what I mean? So, life is struggle, for everybody at one time or another. But there's just been a lot of good. Right. So,
and I think that, Eyvonne, I think you bring up a really good point. For myself, and I think that I speak for most, if not all, women engineers. I don't.
It's a big mantle.
I know. Shit.
I'm
there
joking.
I go again.
I'm joking with you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to throw you off. I'm just joking with you. Please,
okay.
Please.
every problem is not because you're a woman, right?
I don't want that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
At the end of the day, we're engineers, right?
I just want to be another engineer.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, I just want to be recognized as another engineer. I want to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And I don't, I just want to be valued for what I can bring to the table, in terms of my skills and in terms of the solutions that I offer, or maybe the perspective that I give on, working a problem. If I could leave my skirt at the door and not have it be like some sexist joke and come into the room and just be, another engineer, I would do that. I would do that in a split second,
And, I'm not recommending you do this because the world's very different when this happened. But I mean, for me, I always felt like when I reached one of the guys sort of status, like that was a good thing. Because it meant I was a peer. But I get also how that may not be a moniker that every woman would appreciate. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't recommend you ever telling a female peer that like she's just like one of the guys, because depending on her background and her life experience, that may not be received well. But
that may not be the compliment you want it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, 20 years ago, it was like, okay, we're peers. And that's what I want. I want to be a peer with, in the chat. Why not peer or equal?
Being treated that way is really what you want, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
saying that to someone, maybe not the right words, but treating them that way. Yeah.
I don't want to be treated specially because I'm a woman.
Yep.
I don't want to be treated specially because I'm not white. I want to be, like I said, I want to be part of the solution that we're working on. And I don't want,
I just don't want to be weird.
I don't want to be weird. I'm like, don't make it weird, guys. Don't make it weird.
I mean, if I could summarize this whole conversation, it would be, don't be weird.
Don't make it weird.
Don't make it weird. Can we get that on like a bumper sticker or a laptop sticker?
Andy, that's the title of the episode. Don't make it weird.
Don't make it weird. I hesitate to say it on a shirt because depending on where you place it,
Don't even get me started about
exactly.
Ladies cut tees, people. Ladies cut tees.
Oh, for F's sake. Can I just say how many?
The vendor swag.
Vendor swag.
Too
stuff.
masculine.
I'm like, do I look like a box? Oh my God. I'm like, no t-shirts. I'm like, no t-shirts, no t-shirts, no t-shirts.
If you've learned anything tonight, ladies cut tees, vendors. That's what we want.
Yeah, that's your takeaway today.
Thank you.
And because even if you get a small jacket, the sleeves are too long. Right? The struggle is real.
Man, I think that's a great place to actually sort of start wrapping up tonight now that we're there. Is there,
now that we've gotten
weird, is there anything else y'all want to say? I feel like we've said a lot of stuff and I feel good, but is there anything else y'all want to say about, what men can do, how to not make it weird, besides the t-shirts thing? Anything else we haven't touched on that you want to end with? Or
well, I mean, I think so. If you've made it to the end of this conversation, thank you. Because it's a lot. But I do think the whole, women that I know that do this for a living, they really do just want to be peers. They want to be treated like, just another colleague, and they want to make a contribution, and they want they kind of want the same things.
The network to work.
Yeah, they want the network to work. They want to be great at their jobs.
Yep.
They don't want to hear or talk or think about sex at work. Really, it's pretty simple,
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you on that. I'm like, we're here
same.
to do a job. We're here to make the network work. We're here to make the packets go. And don't ask me if I want dinner with you,
Unless it's like a team thing. Yeah. Invite me to that. Don't go do it's just the guys. No.
Team building, yes. Yeah. Date, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. This has been a great conversation.
Awesome.
I've had so much fun with y'all. Thank you, Eyvonne and Micheline. This has been wonderful. So I think we're ready to end it there.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of NetEng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.